Taylor Librarian Phillips hiked the Appalachian Trail in 2003 with a low base weight, something difficult to obtain with available gear at that time. That's why his fellow hikers were astonished when he decided to start carrying around field guides, which demolished that lightweight theme. But Taylor wanted to be present on the trail, to know what he was seeing and hearing along his walk through nature. That passion for being present and educated while outside evolved into the ecotourist business and wildlife-focused nonprofits that he runs today out of Wyoming. I'm one of your hosts, Yeti Legs, and you're listening to the Yeti Walks into Base Camp Talking Through Hiking podcast, a show for hikers, backpackers, thru-hikers, tree huggers, and anyone who just loves to walk outside. We're a hiking podcast with a goal to make the outdoors more accessible for all of you by telling stories, sharing information, and having folks on that offer advice, gear, and peace of mind. We also like to talk about environmental issues and what's happening on our planet. Knowledge is power, and as lovers of the great outdoors, we want all of us to feel a bit more empowered. Stay tuned to hear how a thru-hiker turned conservationist and to see the good that you as a hiker can turn your passions into. A huge thanks to Leve Outdoors and Bowl and Kettle for sponsoring this episode. Listen through to win a free Alpha 90 hoodie from Leve Outdoors. All right, let's go hit the trail. What's going on, trail family, Tramily, all the folks who like to go outside and walk? Welcome to another Environmental Corner episode here with Yeti Walks into Base Camp. I'm one of your hosts, Yeti Legs. Today, we are talking to a thru-hiker gone conservationist. We've got here with us Taylor Phillips. He is the founder and owner of Wildlife for Tomorrow and EcoTour Adventures. Taylor, thanks so much for taking the time to be on our show today. And I'm really looking forward to what you have to talk about.
Yeah. Hey, no problem, Wes. Super. It's great to be here. It's always amazing to connect with fellow thru-hikers. That experience was, I would say, formative in my life, outside of marrying my beautiful bride and being a part of having our kids, like, best part of my life through hiking. Thanks for having me on the show. And I look forward to swapping some trail stories and sharing my experience. And I want to hear some of your experiences too, Wes.
Oh, totally. What trails have you done?
Oh, hiking trails. I hike every summer, but long distance trails, specific to the Appalachian Trail.
Okay.
Georgia to Maine, class of 2003, March 15th through October 20th. Ooh. So we had a nice, cold, snowy, icy Katahdin summit.
Yeah. In the 100-mile wilderness. That's 100 miles back, isn't it?
It is. Yeah. It's out there. We were crossing Forest Service roads here and there, but it's, pretty remote. I've definitely enjoyed some other long distance travels. But this was the only hiking powered one.
Nice. Do you have any plans to go do another one? It sounds like you've got a family in tow. So I don't know. It's kind of hard to just take time off of normal life unless everybody's going with you, isn't it?
It is. Yeah. But I certainly want to make it a priority to, enjoy some of these trails, with the kids. Right now they're 7 and 10. I know that's been done. Right. We're right now we're backpacking, 3 to 5 days with the kids. So we're working up there. We're getting there.
It's funny you say that because, we've got a kiddo on the way in late August. This will be our first one. And of the big long trails in North America, that's the only one that we've done is the PCT that I was talking to you about earlier. But we would love to take the kiddo on the Appalachian Trail. Do you think the infrastructure and the town stops are frequent enough to allow for I don't know, like a 7 to 10-year-old to do it?
Oh, totally. Totally.
Yeah.
It's, yeah, the Appalachian Trail, from what I understand, is a very different experience from the PCT, right? Appalachian Trail is certainly, more opportunities for towns, road crossings, et cetera. Obviously, the shelter component, that if you wanted to plan your hike accordingly, you could land in a shelter, I think pretty much every night. A shelter, a 3-sided structure, to kind of keep the elements off. Whereas my understanding of the PCT is, right, kind of like longer gaps between water, longer gaps between roads and towns. Not to say that kids can't, tackle that. I think it's all about, kind of perspective and just how folks show up and how, kids are conditioned and what they expect. Right. But the Appalachian Trail, but certainly more of a social experience too. So like that could definitely lend to an easier, time for kiddos.
Sure. Yeah. I definitely wouldn't start a kid out the gate on the Continental Divide Trail or anything like that, but people can do it. So before we started this episode, we were chatting a little bit and you mentioned that your trail name is Librarian. I want to know how you got that on the AT. Were you carrying a bunch of books with you?
Yeah. So I don't know. And actually this kind of is wrapped up in like the story of how I got to where I am now. My trail name then, like the story will kind of continue on to where I am now in my professional money-making space, as well as the conservation NGO space. It was really interesting. So, our year, 2023 was like one of the wetter, seasons on record for the AT hikers. Our first month in, it rained. It was something like 28 or 29 days out of the month of March into April, and we definitely had some snow too. And it's like people we're dropping like flies off the trail. People are like, what have I gotten into? Oh my gosh, this is not fun. This is not cool. I'm having a horrible time. And like, I was right there with them, soaking wet, blisters on the feet, just, not the most incredible experience. In retrospect and kind of looking back, I was like, I wasn't living in the present moment. I was thinking about drier times. I was thinking about sunshine. I was thinking about my friends up the trail. I was thinking about finishing in Maine. I was thinking, I wasn't being mindful of where I was and the experience that I currently was having. And it was interesting. So, I went into NOC, the Nantahala Outdoor Center, there in the Smoky Mountain region. And, I went to their bookstore and, bought a bunch of field guides. So bought a book on wildflowers, on trees, and on birds. I bought myself like a little, compact set of binoculars. And I remember, and that night I remember, kind of staying at their center with a bunch of their staff. I think ate a lot of good food, probably had a couple of beers, maybe a little bit too much fun that night, as you do on the trail. And I remember, I remember leaving that valley floor and like climbing up into the mountains, like into like wet snow and rain with like this library of books. And I showed up at the shelter and like all my trail friends were there. And I just I just threw these books on the table. And they were like, "You are now the librarian." They're like, "What the heck? Why did you Taylor, your winter base pack weight?" I think it was about 15 pounds. So no food, no water, 15 pounds, just like my spring/winter rain gear, all, sleeping kit, everything, 15 pounds.
Which I'm going to acknowledge, that's pretty light for your winter setup. you know?
It was like, I was bare bones for sure.
Yeah.
Like I had the summer, pack weight down to 8, which is amazing. And, my friends were like, what the heck are you doing, Taylor? Like you have this incredible light setup and gear. And here you just added, 5 pounds or whatever it was to your kit. You are now the librarian. I was like, okay, whatever. All right.
That's brilliant. Did you absorb a lot of information when you were at the center, or is this something that you like picked up over time as you were, hiking and seeing things and referencing your guidebooks?
Yeah, like coming into the center there to buy those field guides, like I just finished college. I just got a degree in environmental studies and environmental philosophy. I'd always loved the outdoors, and I remember going on wildlife drives with my parents back in the day, back in Virginia, Southwest Virginia. So like the natural world wasn't foreign to me, which some people it is when they're hiking the Appalachian Trail. And I think that's just amazing that people are like really stepping out of their comfort zone and, and embarking on a trip like that. That's so admirable. So I already had some connection, if you would, to the natural world and the natural sciences. So I guess not too surprising, but like what those field guides did, it did a couple of things. One is it really helped me, focus in on the present moment. Like, instead of daydreaming, the rain away, like I was looking at the field guides and I was identifying plants. I was using my binoculars and identifying birds. I was finding edible plants and, bringing those plants into my meals. And all of a sudden, that forced me to like be in the present moment. And it totally just did a 180 for my experience, and the miles just started to float away, and I look up and it's like, holy smokes, like I just hiked 10 miles. Where'd that 10 miles go? But like I was having the time of my life, kind of paying close attention to the natural world. And after a couple of weeks of doing that, as like trail friends go, like they come and go, right? You're hiking slower or faster, folks take a break, whatnot. So after a couple of weeks of people kind of coming and going, like all of a sudden there was like this solid group of hikers that we were all heading north. And we were all like embracing this natural history, kind of notion as we were heading north. Mm-hmm. So it forced me to like be in the present, but then all of a sudden it helped develop a community of hikers that we were all doing the same thing, moving north. And that was really cool, that how it kind of brought us all together.
That's really beautiful, because it's easy to get engrossed in other things than being present when hiking. You're focused on the next town meal, or if you got a timeline that you have to stay very strict and rigid to, or if you're doing the social media thing or taking videos for your YouTube. All these things can be a distraction, but this sounds like it was a really positive distraction for your experience. And I've kind of found photography to be a distraction in a good way, because it definitely slows down my hiking pace. So I'm seeing things more. And that's definitely what you were doing too.
For sure. Yeah. It's, so one of my employees here at EcoTour Adventures in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, she and her husband, they're quite a bit younger than I am. And they recently, hiked the AT just a couple of years ago. And, we sat down last year and just kind of chatted about the experiences a little bit. And, their experience was very different. When I was on the trail, I remember like one individual having a phone. So this was in 2003, right? So, cell phones were certainly a thing, but the technology wasn't really there. Like the batteries were pretty pathetic. There's less of the country connected by cell towers and being in service, and there just wasn't that digital component on the trail. Whereas I was chatting with Amelia and Ricky, and they had mentioned that had overwhelmed the trail experience for them. That they would come to a shelter and, 75% of the people would be on their device, especially a place like on the AT where you're high on ridges surrounded by valleys that have towns, right? So there's like pretty much the entire trail now, you have service. So, you know how like scrolling and all that social is so addicting that people, they get to shelters and instead of like having conversations with each other, they're posting, they're updating, they're listening to music, they're doing all those things. And, it seems like that, gosh, would really take away from the experience, at least from the experience, the type of experience that I had. I guess it's a different kind of experience, and you have to give that to folks that want that kind of experience, but it's just different, right?
Yeah, your experience sounds far richer, in my opinion. Like there is a movement starting where people are deciding to do long distance hikes and not take digital maps. They're using paper maps, go figure. And, trying to be more in tune with the process and with their natural surroundings instead of the outside digital world. So there's something to that.
Yeah, I think so. And like, I had not heard that, okay, there's like the trend kind of reversing of like where things have come. So I think that's really cool. Yeah. In 2003, we had, I forget the names of the books, but yeah, we had just a paper map and then we had a guidebook. And it's like that, like even that was like more than you needed. Like, it told you where every spring was, where every road turn, where every, blue trail was. It had so much information in there.
Even though it's hot outside, the nights can still be a little bit cool or, in some places, even freezing. To cut weight in my pack, I've started carrying clothing that I can wear during the day and in the sleeping bag for warmth while reducing extra ounces. For me, Leve Outdoors hits that sweet spot. With Alpha Direct tops, beanies, and pants, I cozy up in my sleeping bag with my back hurting a tad bit less at the end of every day. Cameron, the founder of Leve Outdoors, offers Alpha 60, 90, and 120 hoodies with different weights and therefore different warmth. But they're all only a handful of ounces. The bigger that Alpha number, by the way, the warmer the layer. He also sews a waterproof jacket weighing around 4 ounces. Let me let that sink in for a second. I know your jaw just dropped a little bit, didn't it? 4 ounces for a rain jacket. Use the code Yeti Walks into Base Camp, that's the name of our podcast, at leveoutdoorco.com for 10% off Alpha hoodies, sun shirts, and even some new DCF dry bags he's made. But if you don't believe my testimony, then you can try out a free Alpha 90 hoodie for yourself. Tag us at Yeti Walks into Base Camp and 2 of your friends on your favorite Leve Outdoors Instagram post. The first one to tag us gets the swag. Thanks, Cameron, for sponsoring the show and for keeping the load on all of our backs a tad bit lighter. Now, how did all this translate into you, founding 2 businesses here and, paving a career in conservation, but also tourism? Because, tourism promotes folks getting outside, at least your ecotourism does, and, a deeper love and appreciation for a natural environment makes people want to protect it more. So how did it translate into this?
Yeah, it's so let's talk about my development into the quote unquote librarian as a character walking from Georgia to Maine. So yeah, like I found myself like guiding those individuals in essence. Bending down with them and, kind of showing them this wildflower, this edible plant, that bird, and kind of and then experiencing the joy that brought them, as well as like what it did for their trail experience. And it really helped me, identify that as individuals, sometimes we're removed from the natural world because of the busyness of our days, because of, social media and the web and all these other pressures. And, the natural world I think is such a tonic to help us, slow down and be mindful. And I just really love like being in a position to kind of share the natural world with folks. And I feel like I really first discovered that hiking on the Appalachian Trail with my new field guides. So I was in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, kind of the summer before the Appalachian Trail experience. So hiked, and then right after the trail came back to Jackson and started guiding for some other companies. And that really just confirmed the interest, and it confirmed I guess it validated, my feelings for guiding, and it was like, okay, yeah, let's keep going with that. So guided for a couple different guide services here, and then in 2008, I founded Jacksonville EcoTour Adventures. So just traded in a personal car and for a guiding vehicle, and then started guiding natural history and wildlife viewing programs throughout the greater Yellowstone ecosystem in Yellowstone and Grand Teton National Parks. And, now I wake up and I was like, oh, what the heck happened? We're 18 years in now, and I've got a team of 44 people behind me, guiding these programs.
I'm actually going to ask you, what type of guiding do you do? Is it backpacking, hiking? Is it in the rivers? What's it look like?
Yeah, no, so great. So everything from 4-hour to multi-day experiences. All of the programming focuses on a high level of natural history interpretation. So teaching about the geology of the area, the cultural history of the area, the flora, the fauna, kind of current political issues that are surrounding the region. And then we're educating, of course, out in the field on our auto-based wildlife viewing programs. We'll go from wildlife hotspot to hotspot to hotspot to observe and study species like elk, moose, bison, grizzly bears, wolves, bighorn sheep, etc. We'll enjoy some short hikes on those trips. And then we also offer kind of longer hiking programs in Yellowstone National Park, as well as cross-country ski and snowshoe programs in Grand Teton National Park in the wintertime.
And Wildlife for Tomorrow, do you want to touch on that a little bit and what it is?
Yeah, totally. So Wildlife for Tomorrow is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and we are set up. I founded Wildlife for Tomorrow in 2022, and we are set up to engage Wyoming's travel industry. So think of hotels, restaurants, gas stations, any business in the state that's connected to Wyoming's travel industry. I am targeting kind of this industry, those businesses, to financially invest in wildlife conservation projects. So projects that support the wildlife resource that these businesses rely on. It's really interesting that, of course, my business, EcoTour Adventures, directly relies on wildlife. So, we're driving throughout the national parks, we're observing these species, so directly wildlife benefits my company. You take a step back, Wyoming's larger industry, which is our second largest industry as a state. Our largest industry, revenue generating industry, would be our mineral industry here in Wyoming. So Wyoming's travel and tourism industry is our second largest industry, our largest private sector employer for the state. And the number one reason people come to Wyoming is to see wildlife. So it's like, wow, we have this huge industry that is, for the most part, fueled by people's interest to see wildlife. So there's an incredible opportunity for this industry as a whole to put money on the ground to support this resource. So we're collecting donations from these businesses and investing those dollars in wildlife research projects, wildlife crossings, wildlife habitat improvement projects. Yeah, so it's been a lot of work, but a lot of fun, and it really complements kind of the work of EcoTour Adventures quite well. Two separate organizations, but they definitely lend to each other pretty well.
It sounds like you've been on like a continuous through hike ever since the Appalachian Trail, just in a different way, and continuing to promote folks getting outside and being that naturalist guide for them. But that has to feel rewarding for you, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's fun. It definitely provides, solid meaning to, I would say, my existence. Like this ecosystem, the greater Yellowstone ecosystem, I've fallen into love with this ecosystem and its richness. It's the pulsing wildlife migrations that travel the landscapes. Springtime is amazing. Just, one of my guides was out yesterday, and like I saw this footage that they got on there through the spotting scope of this moose and twin calves in front of the river, and the calves were suckling on mother. And it's just like where the heck are we? Like this is amazing. Like this ecosystem is one of the strongholds of wildlife in the continental, United States. And it brings so much joy, and it's important to so many people. And it's a part of the fabric of the United States of America and public lands. And there's too much at stake, not to care, not to pitch in. So I feel fortunate to be in a position to, to give back. The natural world, it's given me so much. So I feel like it's my, my obligation to do what I can to pitch in.
Now, whenever I think about wildlife in Wyoming, the first two different species that come to mind are gray wolves over in Yellowstone, but not exclusively to Yellowstone, and bison. Does Wildlife for Tomorrow do any work with either of those two species?
Not at this point, I would say. We are certainly not opposed to. The collection of wildlife species out here is just so vast. Every large mammal that lived here 200 years ago still lives here today, and that's pretty incredible.
It is.
In terms of species that are incredibly resilient, and are, I would say that are doing well on the landscape. Wolves and bison they're doing quite well within the national parks. There's certainly talk and interest with some stakeholders about kind of developing bison populations outside of the national parks, and that's being done really successfully on the Wind River Reservation. It's taken some years, but the Jason Baldas is just doing phenomenal work, kind of bringing bison back onto the reservation. But kind of more sensitive species, we're really looking at cheatgrass. So cheatgrass, it's a non-native species, and I know it's not sexy, but species like bison and elk and mule deer, and a host of other herbivores out there are reliant on native vegetation. And cheatgrass is a non-native. It's spreading like wildfire. And unfortunately, it really promotes the spread of wildfire. When it grows, it's not really palatable by native wildlife. And it's incredibly destructive to landscapes. So that is a species that we really have our eyes on, and that I would really like to focus on down the road with kind of helping to support financially, cheatgrass eradication programs. Another project that we're really supportive of right now. We just bought $50,000 worth of radio tracking telemetry collars that biologists are putting on elk. right now, the Wyoming Game and Fish Department, there's significant gaps in their knowledge regarding our local elk population in terms of migration routes, where these animals are wintering, where they're summering. So, we're helping the department kind of fund some research so they can kind of better understand the Jackson Hole elk herd and how new diseases, how hunting, how, climate change, reducing feeding on our kind of state run and federally run feed grounds, like how all these things are going to tie in to this elk herd. So excited to help the department with that project.
That's really awesome. Yeah, I did a job with CPW, Colorado Parks and Wildlife, last year, and we mapped invasive species. Usually whenever you come across cheatgrass, there is no point for cheatgrass. It's just massive polygons because it runs rampant on the hillsides and in meadows. It's quite the problem. So thanks for working on that. And thanks for working with elk. These are both like huge endeavors, I'm sure. And if y'all can find a way to help assist in eradication of cheatgrass, that's huge.
That would be amazing. I would be super stoked right now. Yeah.
I'm going to read off a few menu items here. Let's see how they sound. Crawfish etouffee, chicken tikka masala, and Mexican street corn grits. That sounds like the specials for a restaurant you would expect to find in the South, right? Believe it or not, these are actually backpacking meals that you can eat out in the middle of nowhere on the dirt with an epic sunset backlighting the mountains. Sarah and Brett Bolin, founders of Bowl and Kettle, wanted to do just that. Feast on amazing meals when camping out in the middle of friggin' nowhere. So they decided to create their own freeze-dried, not dehydrated, backpacking meals with first ingredients like butter, marinated chicken breast, whole milk, and Monterey Jack cheese. Basecamp and I happily carried several Bowl and Kettle meals with us on both the Colorado Trail and the Arizona Trail last year, and we never once regretted carrying a single ounce of those. Sarah and Brett have perfected the 3 meals they currently offer, undoubtedly with more coming in the future, and they want you to try some of the backcountry goodness for yourselves. They've given us a 10% discount code to share with you, our listeners. Head over to bowlandkettle.com, pick out your favorite variety pack, whatever floats your boat, and plug in the code YETICHOW at checkout. That is YETICHOW to get 10% off of your entire order. Thank you, Sarah and Brett, for sponsoring this podcast and this episode. And I wanted to ask one last heavy question here. The public lands rule and its rescission recently, is that going to affect conservation in Wyoming? And is it going to affect your businesses at all? And do you want to try and explain that to our listeners now and what this means for conservation?
The public lands issue is, it weighs heavy on my heart. And, I just want to first recognize and be incredibly thankful for, everyone that stood up a year or so ago and, wrote their senators and representatives on the state level, on the federal level, the different outdoor groups, hunters, outfitters, ATV users, conservationists. It's like, it was incredible to see, a very diverse group of outdoor enthusiasts come together over this issue. And the fact that, the politicians, they heard it and they backpedaled a bit. And I think that's incredible. This issue is going to come up again. It's going to be incredibly important that we, as a constituency, keep standing up, because I think they're incredible, conservation concerns to be had. Right now, like the narrative is that no one's interested in large scale sell-offs. Well, at least that's, kind of a narrative that I heard from our local Wyoming delegation. But I'm concerned that, by opening up the federal legislation to allow for more small scale sell-off, that's going to provide the broader framework for down the road for larger scale sell-offs. It's just, it'd be devastating to what America is, our values, I think it's contradictory to what the vast majority of Americans want. It'd be a crying shame.
Yeah. Love for nature is nonpartisan. Like, it spans all party lines, and it's easy to try and segregate people based on their political beliefs. But whenever I see people so strongly against sell off of public lands that we all get to enjoy, and it's our privilege to get to enjoy, I don't know. It gives me a lot of hope for the future of conservation. The large majority of our listenership is a bunch of hikers, hiker trash, thru-hikers, whatever you want to call them. Why? And I like to ask this because this is, in essence, a hiking podcast. Why should hikers care about conservation of wildlife and, ecotourism and all these things that we've talked about today? Because it seems a little distant, but in my mind, it is like holding hands with everything that a hiker loves.
So hikers were provided the experience of the experience they had, whether it's on the CDT, PCT, AT, Arizona Trail, Colorado, et cetera, because of the protections that have previously put in place. There are locations around the world that have been they've been developed already, and it's like the public lands and the natural resources that are still present in the United States. It's a national treasure, and I think that all too often, and I'm guilty of this as well. When I go on a after work mountain bike ride, it's like sometimes we forget that everything that was previously put in place to allow us to hike in that or bike in that national forest. And, the bike wouldn't be quite the same if we didn't have the trees and the birds and the wildlife, the fresh air, the clean mountain stream to grab water from, or to splash our face with, or to, jump in that, that beautiful alpine lake. I think that we just need to, kind of slow down and smell the roses, literally. And then also just, and really, we just can't forget like what it's taken to preserve what we too often take for granted.
Totally. I wanted to wrap by asking you what your favorite moment is, or was rather, what your favorite moment was from the Appalachian Trail back when you hiked it in 2003.
Oh my gosh. There's the, kind of key moments. Obviously it's, day one, it's the last day hiking Katahdin, the laughters, the campfires, the time in trail towns, and just the characters you meet, right? The characters you meet on the trail, just so incredible. I don't know, like you first asked that question, and like the first thing that came to mind, I think we were in Pennsylvania, and some sort of like incredible rainstorm. The trail was, I don't know, we were, I think, on the trail, and for like at least a mile, shin deep in water, and just hiking. There was like 3 or 4 of us. And we were just like in awe and disbelief and just like laughing so hard, just like just not believing the current situation. Obviously, we were just like soaked to the T. We were warm. We were fine, right? But just it's those moments that don't quite go as planned, right? That you tend to remember.
Oh yeah,
just like sharing that moment with some good friends that I still keep up with was very memorable. And just the laughter, the smiles, the elevated joy. It was really cool.
Yeah, a lot of those type 2 fun moments actually come back to be some of your, or at least in my case, comes back to be some of my favorite memories from trails that we've done. Like they just fucking suck in the moment, but you're like, wow, that actually was kind of fun and crazy that happened.
Totally. Yes. Yep. No, totally. Type 2 fun. Yeah. Holy smokes. I've got some stories. We'll have to save those for another podcast, maybe.
Do you have one more story you want to share?
Yeah, this is pretty awesome. Okay, so a buddy and I, this is in Yellowstone National Park. Midwinter, we decided to ski across the park through Yellowstone. The weather's great, but it had just like dumped snow in Yellowstone. In Yellowstone, there are some incredibly snowy regions of the park. And, this was in our, maybe our not so smart days that we decided to pull a sled. And I wouldn't recommend pulling a sled when the snowpack is bottomless. And it's super cold, light density snow. So we were essentially pulling snow plows behind us. And, we were lucky to cover 6 miles a day of just, pushing ourselves to the brink. And there's this one section of the park where we were kind of paralleling a river, and there was avalanche terrain and rocky cliffs that we were kind of navigating. So we had to cross the river, and this region of the park, there's about a 12-foot snowpack. So we had to, kind of shovel kind of steps down to the river, and take our skis off, boots off, cross the river. And as we're standing in the river, when it's 0 degrees midwinter, we would then have to shovel a place to land and then, kind of terrace up to get onto the top of the snow so we can kind of keep going. And we, so that whole crossing from, seeing the river to crossing it and getting our skis back on, probably 25 minutes.
Holy cow.
And, and then we started going for 2 minutes, and we were like, oh my gosh, we crossed onto an island. We were like, holy smokes, we have to do this again.
Hey, at least you had water, right? You didn't have to melt.
We had water. We had lots of water. Yeah. But it's just one of those things where it's like, all right, we just have to laugh it off, and keep on going. That was pretty fun.
That's a son of a bitch moment right there.
Son of a bitch. Yeah, no, pretty much. But it was a lot of fun. That was certainly type 2 fun that my buddy TG and I we look back fondly on. And it was awesome, a great trip looking back. And it was really cool. It found me on I had a full page on Outside Magazine. He's a great photographer. And TG, he was Taylor Glenn Photography. Look him up. He had me pose in the middle of this river. And I was cursing at him. I was like, dude, it's cold. I'm freezing. He was like, no, dude, it'll be worth it. And sure enough, he submitted it to Outside Magazine, and I was full page spread in the magazine. So it was pretty fun.
Please tell me you bought him a beer for that one.
I bought him beer. Yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I didn't bring it on the trip, though. No.
No, that adds to your base weight. Sorry. Wait, actually, no. Beer's consumable, but it adds to your pack weight.
Maybe we had some whiskey, higher concentration of oomph, right? Yeah.
No, it's bigger bang for your buck. That's what we do. Whiskey or wine on trails.
There we go.
Always. Yeah. Man, Taylor, it's been a treat talking to you, bud. I'm so used to calling people by their trail names, Taylor or Librarian. It's been a treat, bud. Thanks for being on the show and for really bringing a positive spin to conservation and sharing your transition from thru-hiker to conservationist / really, I want to call you ecotourism naturalist, because that's really what it feels like. You're a naturalist out here sharing the love of nature with other people. And that's really a great cause to take on. So thanks for that. And thanks for sharing with other hikers that you can turn your love of hiking into something that makes a big impact. I've talked to some other folks, and in essence, thru-hiking is a selfish sport. And rightfully so, because you're taking the time out of your life to do it. But you can turn that love of the outdoors and that love of hiking into something that really makes a lot of impact in our world. So, all right. Well, that was our interview with Taylor Phillips. Super great chat that we just had with him. Wanted to give a quick shout out and thanks to the Fire Wenceslaus for our intro and our outro music. Thanks, Anders, for letting us use it forever. And if you like these conservation related episodes, Let us know. We would love to get some feedback from you. Shoot us an email at yetiwalksinabasecamp@gmail.com. And lastly, if you're out hiking in Wyoming and you're in 12-foot snow, having to build yourself a staircase out, or whether you're hiking the Appalachian Trail or your favorite dog path in your neighborhood, at the end of the day, we're all just outside walking. Just wanted to let you know that here at our show, Yeti Walks into Base Camp, we don't use AI for anything. AI has detrimental impacts on our environment, and we just don't want any part of it. So just know that when you're listening to our episodes, each one is hand edited by our team with talent and integrity. Thanks for listening.